how do we interpret Saturn in Aquarius? Well, first let's make sure that we understand what Aquarius signifies. Then let's do the same for Saturn. After that, we can talk easily about how to interpret Saturn in Aquarius, and let's do that with examples of actual people who have Saturn in Aquarius, and we'll take a look at one or two charts of those people in more detail so we can see it actually working in a real case. So first, let's start off with Aquarius itself. The basic nature of what Aquarius is all about is decentralization. There's two aspects to what I mean by decentralization. The first one that I want to talk about is the diversification meaning of decentralizing. Aquarius decentralizes things, and that means it diversifies, or it is diverse. So this is why it is known as an eclectic zodiac sign. It's diverse, it's not all concentrated on one point. It's spread out. And its interests are spread out. And an interesting ramification of this also is that this makes Aquarius very relatable to many people. It has wide appeal or wide relatability because it's been everywhere. It has a little bit of everything in it. There's something in it for everyone. The other aspect of decentralizing is to diffuse something. So if you centralize something, you pull everything into one spot, you focus it, it becomes kind of more powerful. If you decentralize, you diffuse things, you make them a little bit weaker. So Aquarius is not a very particularly intense sign at all. It's a diffuse sign. And in terms of this effect that it has on ego, it's more humble. All of the importance is not placed on oneself. The importance is spread out and shared amongst many things. So Aquarius is this uniquely humble zodiac sign. And the ramification of that is that it's no frilly. It's not frilly, it's simple. And it likes to do things which are of service and which are useful to people. This is why it's symbolized by a servant. The symbol for Aquarius is a servant pouring the water into your cup. Now we have a reasonably clear concept of Aquarius. Let's do the same thing with Saturn and try to get clear about what Saturn symbolizes. The fundamental thing that Saturn is all about is negativity. One aspect of negativity means to be pessimistic about things, not to trust things, to assume that things have problems. So it's pessimistic and distrusting. This is why it is skeptical. Saturn is skeptical. It represents skepticism, and this is why Saturn is very favorable towards critique, analysis, logic, criticism, etc. And the ramification of all this is that Saturn is very realistic. And another ramification of being able to be skeptical of something means that you're not emotionally attached to it. So hand in hand with the realism is also an objectivity or a detachment or kind of emotional coldness. The other aspect of negativity, it's not just pessimism, but it also just means a plain old minus sign, which means to decrease things. Negativity is about reduction. So Saturn signifies the decrease of things, the reduction of things, or having less of things. So it signifies scarcity or poverty, etc. There are two aspects to decrease that I want to look at also. One is restriction, and the other is destruction. These are the two ways that you can decrease things. You can destroy things to decrease them, or you can just restrict the proliferation. Saturn has both aspects to it. It is known as the planet of strictness. It symbolizes strict people because strict people are the people who restrict us. And also this is why Saturn represents people who have been restricted. So restricted people can mean handicapped people. Restricted people can mean any kind of subordinate, like the employee or your general basic public proletariat, the masses, the working class, is signified by Saturn. On the other hand, decrease also can be affected by destruction, and this is why Saturn is about destruction. So that means death. And the things associated to death, which is the decay of things, and decay is associated to filth. And then the ramification of Saturn symbolizing death also means that it signifies the end of the lifespan, aka the longevity. Saturn is very long term, very slow and steady, and tenacious about getting things done. It doesn't care about tomorrow necessarily. It cares about the end, the long-term end, not the immediate end. And that's why it has a very tenacious or patient nature to it. So now I think we understand what we need to understand about Aquarius and what we need to understand about Saturn. We can go ahead and take a look at how you can interpret Saturn in Aquarius. What you want to do, as you do with any planet in any sign, is just look for where they're talking about exactly the same thing. The planet and the sign are talking about exactly the same thing or exactly the opposite thing. So for example, Saturn has to do with the proletariat. Aquarius is very much affable to the proletariat. Remember we said Aquarius is very relatable because common people can relate to it. It has something in it for everybody. It itself is quite common. It has a humble nature to it. So the mass appeal nature of Saturn goes very well with the relatable mass appeal nature of Aquarius. And the results to interpret from Saturn and Aquarius is this person has widespread appeal. People can easily relate to this person. People would easily see something in this person that they can relate to themselves and therefore like the person. So a couple of names who are famous for mass appeal with Saturn and Aquarius. Elvis Presley. Now, of course, it's not just Saturn and Aquarius that makes Elvis Presley, but Saturn and Aquarius is one of the things about his chart that made him have that humongous mass appeal. Elizabeth Taylor. You see, well, I thought Saturn represented ugliness. Elizabeth Taylor's gorgeous. Well, what do you want to do? Erase Saturn from her chart then? She's got no ugliness? No, you put Saturn in a good spot. In a spot where it likes the sign that it's in. Aquarius belongs to Saturn. So then you're not getting trouble from the things that are troubling about Saturn, if Saturn has good dignity. So you get good-looking people, appealing people, attractive people. Elvis, Elizabeth Taylor, Sophia Loren. Brigitte Bardot, who also is going to be a name that you could use in the next interpretation that we're going to talk about too. Brigitte Bardot. Cardi B. Johnny Depp. So what is that next interpretation? It's also based on the fact that Saturn is very mass-oriented, like common person-oriented or restricted or humbled person-oriented. And that goes very well with Aquarius because Aquarius is very humble. It's selfless. So Saturn has a very it's servile friendly. Saturn is servile friendly. Saturn doesn't like to be put up on a throne. Saturn would rather be down on the sidewalk. And Aquarius is exactly the same, as you would guess, since Saturn is the owner and maker of Aquarius. So what do you expect from that combination? Well, one thing is they're a cause-oriented person. They're society-oriented, and they're leadership-capable. Cause-oriented, I mean, they don't put themselves first. They'll put some other interest or somebody else's interest or needs equally important to their own or more important than their own. Like Brigitte Bardot, that's what I'm saying. Brigitte Bardot is a very big animal rights activist. Society-oriented, they'll think of the needs of society over their own needs. They'll therefore become leadership capable. They'll want to take care of society. They'll want to be given some position of power so that they could use it for society. So a couple of big names. With this, Winston Churchill, Henry VIII, Jacques Chirac, Kamala Harris, and Charles Manson. So this is going to be one of the charts that we want to look at. Charles Manson, cause-oriented, society-oriented, leadership-capable, yeah, but in a twisted way. And then the third thing about Saturn in Aquarius, Saturn is good with skepticism, Saturn is good with logic, Saturn is good with analysis of things. And Aquarius likes to go out and experience a bunch of things because it's diverse. It's eclectic. So the logical nature of Saturn working in the eclectic nature of Aquarius means here you have a person with a lot of curiosity. The curiosity has kind of a skeptical flavor to it, but nonetheless they're curious to evaluate things. So you could describe these people as smart. They're interested in learning about stuff. So they're smart. And you can also describe them as abnormal, not normal in how they think about things. Because they have a skepticism and an eclecticism at the same time. So what they do is they pull together a lot of ideas and come up with their own thing. They don't entirely conform to any one of the things that they pull together. So a couple of names with this that illustrate this nature of Saturn in Aquarius. Carl Sagan, the great scientist. Carl Sagan also is not just a great scientist, but he really exemplifies the mass appeal nature of Saturn in Aquarius. He's a scientist that was able to get on TV and have like a prime time, like big audience watching him on TV, interested in him. Garry Kasparov, chess master. Carl Jung, psychologist. Friedrich Nietzsche, philosopher. Aleister Crowley, a philosopher. Jeff Bezos, smart, collective, gets a new idea. Howard Hughes. Salvador Dali, Mozart, and Eisner. People who are intellectual and kind of on their own beat and doing things new. Doing things that other people didn't do before because of the way that they're pulling together all these ideas, but not just accepting the ideas. So I think two charts that would be very interesting to compare would be Charles Manson and Kamala Harris. So let's look at those two charts and see a real life example of Saturn in Aquarius in a full chart. Here's Kamala Harris's chart. So one thing is, you find that her Saturn in Aquarius is all alone. This is generally helpful to get a clear interpretation. It's a simple, clear, straightforward interpretation. The planet is in the house. The planet is in the sign. It's by itself. It's not mixing with a bunch of other stuff. So typically, when a planet is all by itself, it kind of shines more on its own. Her Saturn is at 28 degrees and her ascendant is at 24 degrees and her moon is at 28 degrees. That means that Saturn is really aligned with the house cusps from the ascendant and the moon and its house cusps. Look at her chart actually. 7 planets in 7 signs, 9 planets in 9 signs. She really has that going for her. That's her big yoga actually. That's called the Vina yoga. So that's another thing, is besides that, just having Saturn in Aquarius, she has this Vina yoga, which makes a person extremely outstanding. The other thing about Kamala Harris, having 7 planets in 7 signs and Saturn in Aquarius is very synergistic, because 7 planets in 7 signs means basically the same thing that Saturn in Aquarius means, in this sense. 7 planets in 7 signs means your assets are spread out into many diverse areas. You have many houses occupied. And that's what Saturn in Aquarius is very good for. It's diverse. Now, let's compare this with Charles Manson, who also has Saturn in Aquarius. But as you can see, it's not by itself in its sign, so it's not going to be as clearly simple an interpretation. Furthermore, it's not one of the big players in the chart. It's a supporting player. How do you determine that? Remember we said with Kamala Harris, 28 degrees is Saturn. Moon is at 28 also. Ascendant is at 24, quite close. Rahu Ketu, 25, very close to Saturn's degree. Saturn is in the pocket where its aspects and its conjunctions can really affect things. In Charles Manson's case, it's at 22 degrees, and his ascendant is at 5. It's way off. And his moon is at 4. So what does that tell you? It tells you that his moon is very important in his chart. So moon and Rahu conjunction on exact degree as the main player in the chart. That's Charles Manson. He's wild. Moon and Rahu. Look what he has, actually, if you just do the counting of the houses. We said Kamala Harris had 7 planets and 7 signs. He has 3. He has 7 planets and 3 signs. So 7 planets and 3 signs inclines a person to deal with things aggressively. 7 planets and 7 signs, like Kamala has, inclines a person to deal with things with sophistication. So thank you very much. I hope that you enjoyed that explanation of Saturn and Aquarius, starting from the basics and going up to more advanced stuff of looking at it in actual. If you want to see this kind of analysis for you and your chart, you can go to my website, victorcara.com, go over to the readings section, or just put a /R2, and you will get to see the reports that I offer. One of them is called the Overview of Your Birth Chart. Get that one, and you'll get every one of your planets and your signs and your houses and all the aspects and the yogas and all that. Thank you very much.